Hey book lovers, Kaylee here and welcome back to the Enchanted Library. Now is a great time to tell you guys 10 of my favorite reads from 2018. So these are going to be in no particular order, I just have them stacked beside me. So the book on top was Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. So this is the first book that I have read in the Viking sort of subgenre of YA fantasy, and I just absolutely adored this book. I think that Adrienne Young put a lot of thought and effort into the mythology of Viking lore and that sort of thing, and she just really brought the action and the emotion and really let me get into the head of our characters. So I just think that this book was so well done. I've reread it a couple of times since I initially read it, and I am still in love with it. I'm so sad though that it's a standalone, but I am very excited because there is a companion book coming out later next year that I am definitely going to be getting. The next book that I have here is another YA, and it's a sci-fi, which is very difficult for me to find a sci-fi that I enjoy. So I was very pleased with this one and pleasantly surprised, and that is Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. And I think the thing that really stood out to me with this book and the series as a whole is the format in which it's written and the uniqueness of it. Because I have never read anything that was really a mixed media format, I was just super immersed and really intrigued with how it was all put together, and I feel like that really helped me to enjoy this series so much because it was just so well done and so well thought out. I can just imagine how Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff must have mapped out the entire thing and how they chose what kind of document to do for what, but this one had me on the edge of my seat and I absolutely loved it. The next book that I have here came courtesy of an Owl Crate. We got a double book feature which also included Sky in the Deep, but this one I had never heard of, so it was such a nice surprise, and it ended up being definitely one of my favorite books I read this year, and that is Catching Stars by Kayla Keenan. So this book is an adventure fantasy where you have two characters from two totally different backgrounds being thrust together to achieve a goal against their wishes. So it's one of those stories that I feel like if you give the basic premise, it could sound like a lot of different fantasy adventure stories, but Kayla Keenan did the adventure narrative so well, and she made me care about both of the main characters, whether they were together, whether they were apart, and I really loved how she split the points of views, and there was just so much about this book that I absolutely adored, and I'm so grateful that Owl Crate had it in their subscription box because I would have never heard of this otherwise. And I cannot wait for the next book to come out because this is the start of another series, and I need to know what happens after that ending. There is no release date set yet, but it should be coming out in 2019, and I am so excited. The next book that I have here, I have heard so many mixed reviews on BookTube for it, but I really did enjoy it, and I felt like it was non-stop action. I felt like the world was really well realized. It talked about a lot of topics that actually mattered in the world today, even though it's set in a fantasy world, and that is Onyx and Ivory by Mindy Arnett. It's a duology. The next book comes out next year, and I cannot wait to figure out what happens with Kate and Corwin next, because the rebellion in this is real, the backstory, the emotions of the characters are so well realized. I couldn't get enough of this book. The next book that I have here is one from a genre which I really don't read a lot of. I've maybe read a handful of these romance books in the past, but this is definitely if you are more mature, but that is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. And this book was also just announced that the movie rights were given, and I'm so excited to see these characters on screen. You have no idea. It's also very weird when you see yourself reflected in a character of a romance novel. Like, it was just very awkward, but I felt very attached to Stella. Like, I feel like she is me in a way, and I just absolutely loved the story, and I feel like if you are obviously mature enough to handle a romance, I guess, definitely give this a shot because it just exceeded every possible expectation that I could have had for it, and I absolutely adored it. Next, I have a book that I probably wouldn't have heard of if not for the Netflix series coming out this year, but at the start of 2018 I saw a trailer for the movie that was released in August, and I picked up the book right away so I could read it before the movie came out, and that is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. And if you can, I think you can see this, I hope it's not blown out too much. But this story was so enchanting for me. I absolutely loved it. It's written entirely in correspondence, which I thought was really interesting and such a cool format for it, because it just really sort of sets you in the world. And I absolutely love historical fiction, and this is set after the war, and I absolutely loved it. I love these characters. The ending was a little bit abrupt for me, but honestly, the entire time I just had a smile on my face because I just thought it was so well done. I love the characters, I love the story, and this is another one that I really recommend. Next, we have a book that I cannot stop gushing about to my friends. I feel like my one friend is probably tired of me talking to her about this, but she picked it up, so hopefully, Jen, I hope that you really enjoy it. But it's These Rebel Waves by Sarah Rosh. I have never read a Sarah Rosh book before, but this was a great introduction. It also has rebellion and pirates and just such a great story with politics, but magic and botanical magic at that, and I just absolutely love this. I've already read it multiple times since I picked it up in August, and I can't get enough. That ending was so amazing, it just blew my mind, and I feel like so many people need to read this because it was such a wild ride that I can't wait for the next book to come out next year, because I need to know what happens after that ending. I'm seriously freaking out still about it. So this had to make the list. Second last book here is one from an author, again, that I have not read from, but I know that a lot of people love her work. And if this book is any sort of semblance of how she writes otherwise, I need to read more of her stuff. But that was Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. I actually received an ARC of this book back in August from HarperCollins, and I just devoured it. So I was very happy when it also came signed in my owl crate with this beautiful cover, and I feel like, again, this is one that everybody has been talking about and gushing about, and with full rights, because this story was so immersive. I felt like I was living in an anime while I was reading it. I could just picture everything happening in an anime format, and I absolutely loved it. There are so many plot-driven points within this story that just all sort of combine together to make this amazing tale that I really could not get enough of it. The start of the book left me a little bit confused. There is a point of view that I still don't quite get, but if you just stick past that and continue on, you are going to have such a fun journey with this story. And again, this has one of those endings that I was just blown away by, and I can't wait for the next one because I, again, need to know what happens after that, because it was such an explosive ending. And the last book that I have here for one of my favorites of this year really does encompass the entire series, or the entire trilogy, because I just absolutely adored it, and that is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This has just settled in my heart as probably one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely loved this story. That's the simple fact. There are so many nods to Harry Potter in it. There's so much action, there's so much adventure, there's so much magic, and it has one of those storylines that you don't quite know how our main characters are going to get out of it, or if they will get out of it, or what's going to happen following that. And I think that this series just really took a really good look at how each individual character would react to certain situations, and how it would affect their mentality and their relationships, and how the way that it's written really reflects those characters as well. There are so many amazing things that I could say about this series, and I'm so glad that I finally read it, because I've been wanting to read this book since 2015 and 2014 when I first heard about it being released, and it's just taken me so long to read because I was afraid I wouldn't end up liking it because I hyped it up so much in my mind. But it is so worth the hype. If you have not read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, you have to, especially if you're a fan of fantasy, because it just blew all of my expectations out of the water, and I absolutely love Kel and Lila and Rye, and oh my god, this world. I want to live in this world. Well, I want to live in this world just so long as certain things are okay. Like, you'll probably know what I mean, but yes, this was definitely one of the highlights of my year for reading, and I'm just so happy that I finally read it. Alright, so those are 10 of my favorite reads from 2018. There are still a bunch that did not make the list, so be sure to go on over to my Goodreads. I'll put a link in the description down below like always, and also leave a comment down below letting me know if you've read any of these books this year, what your thoughts are, and be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more content. I put out new videos every weekend, and until next time, keep reading.